to the We Whistle podcast. I'm Denise Williams. I'm along here today with my co-host, Stacey Luces.
Hey, hey.
And we have a really special guest today. We'll tell you about her soon. But in one of our recent podcasts, we really reflected on the fact that the Caribbean is having a moment now, and a moment beyond the traditional space that you hear about the Caribbean, beyond the traditional space of sports or really entertainment. What we're seeing globally is that the Caribbean is coming into the mainstream news space. It's moving into mainstream culture. And when you think about it, there are 10 million of us globally. So even though
I'm sure that's underestimated.
Oh, yeah, it's underestimated because guess what? We were speaking to one of the directors in Broward recently, and she said, we reached the 2 million mark here in Broward alone. And that's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, with the 10 million plus of us across the globe, the several millions of us in the region, the Caribbean is really not that small. But with our size, we always punch, I think, above our weight.
Absolutely.
And so in the diaspora where we sit, what we're seeing is leadership emerging in many, many different ways. But sometimes what we're not seeing is the supporting structure around this excellence. And today, our conversation is actually going to sit a little bit in really stepping out of the comfort level to do something that you feel you're called to do, that's so brave, that's so different, and acknowledging the struggle, Stacey, to get those structural support and even broader support around the system.
Listen, when we talk about struggle, we're talking about big struggles like financing and impact, and we're talking about small struggles like it's Monday morning and you can't get out of bed and organize traffic. So anyway, I think based on what Denise said, that's why this conversation today is so important, right? Because at Whistle, when we talk about wealth, we always emphasize that it's not just financial wealth. Yes, we all want to be financially secure, financially prosperous, and we want to have money to do cool things, but we also want to have health wealth. We also want to get up in the morning and not have your body hurting or roll into our midlife elder years and we have comorbidities where we have high blood pressure stacked on top of heart disease, stacked on top of diabetes, right? And so when we talk about wealth in this context, we want to talk about spiritual wealth, emotional wealth, relational wealth, where if I'm sick, and, you know, our guest is going to probably share that story a little bit this morning, where sometimes we are literally going into a dramatic, life-changing, potentially altering surgery, and we're trying to send that last email, right? And so really, what are our priorities? And we talk about community in that context and legacy. And so when Denise talks about building structures and access in the Caribbean having a moment, we also want to get really serious in this conversation. We will have fun, but we want to, as we sit with today's guest, Calibe, it's so amazing to have you. I will give you the formal introduction just now. Calibe saw a gap within what that aspirational tone we want to have in the Caribbean diaspora and the actual reality, and really went against the grain to build something to close that gap. So Calibe Thompson, welcome to the We Whistle podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you.
I just have to say out loud that it cracks me up how you two match clothing without even realizing that you're doing it. I'm sorry, I had to
And
say
we deliberately don't compare notes. Every now and then I'll be like, are you casual? Or it's because we spend so much time together. That's what it is.
I'm sure. Yes.
So Calibe, I'm going to brag on you a little bit. Calibe is a Jamaican-born media producer, storyteller, and cultural strategist. She is also the co-founder and executive director of Island Space Caribbean Museum right here in South Florida in Broward County.
But also the only museum of its kind globally.
Yes. And she is also the creative force behind Island Syndicate, which is a media and events platform, and is the producer of Taste the Islands, one of the first Caribbean culinary shows to air nationally across the U.S. and internationally. Did you bring anything for us to try to?
I'm so sorry. I did not know that was on the agenda. Next time.
Listen, for future guests, please walk with snacks. Anyway, but what Calibe has built, and both Denise and I visited well over a year ago, we went and just kind of walked around with our mouth open because not only was it visually appealing, but also the nerd in us really loved the context, right? And so Island Space is not just a museum. Being the first and only physical space of its kind, it tries to tell the full Caribbean story across the diaspora, linking not only culture, but language and history. And Calibe built this in 2020, and we all know 2020 is so synonymous with the pandemic, the global pandemic. And so we want to talk to her today and really dig into shaping how the Caribbean is seen, understood, and most importantly, remembered, because our past predicates to some extent our future. And there's so many lessons that we can learn from that. So Calibe, welcome again. And I want to say, before we dive into kind of the hard topics, this is probably the hardest question, right? But something you said when we were talking a little bit beforehand really struck me. So you've crossed that 5-year mark.
Yes.
And it feels like you're almost starting over.
Yes.
So I want to dive in a little bit into that, but also, what is this season for you as a leader, as a woman, as a Caribbean, proud-chested person? What does this season feel like for you right now?
Season in work, season in life.
Oh, yes.
I feel like I'm starting over or relearning what life is supposed to look like, right? I'm at that stage where, I've never been married. I have no children, but I've lost one parent. The other one is going through the hypertension, diabetes, dementia, all of this stuff. And it's like, why did nobody tell me? Why did nobody tell me this was going to happen? And so it feels like relearning what being a person, I can't say being a child, I can't say being a parent, but a person figuring out adulting. I don't like the idea. My friends will say to me, oh, I thought you were younger than me. No, I'm almost 50. And I'm doing people know that I have done a lot of things in terms of accomplishments. I've done and achieved a lot of things, but it still always feels like I'm doing something wrong. I remember speaking to Yolande, what is her name? The attorney. And she talked about feeling imposter syndrome, even though she's a partner at one of these big fancy legal firms. And she talked about feeling like she had imposter syndromes, well-educated, well-accomplished. And in this season in my life, I feel like, okay, well, you've done all of this stuff. But I have done stuff. Me, Calibe Thompson, right? I have done things.
Thompson.
I have done things by visioning. And people will try and correct me all the time. Oh, it's envisioning. I know what envisioning is. I feel like the word visioning is an active word. I'm not...
You're manifesting it always.
It's manifesting as opposed to just thinking about what could possibly happen. It is saying, which we all do, what they say, to some people will say to see it, I believe it when I see it. And there are those of us who will say, to see it, I know I must first believe it.
Yes.
I'm one of those people. So
I will first believe it.
Exactly. So I have been one of those people that manifest not by getting this great education in and studying for 50 minutes. I look and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. How did that person do it? How did that person do it? And I build in that way and pull resources, and the universe is conspiring with me for success and bringing these things about. And at this stage in life, when I'm trying to figure out, okay, am I supposed to be building something new or reworking this infrastructure that we've already started laying the foundation for? Something is not right over here. Am I supposed to tear it all down and start again? Or, and I'm glad I'm around people like you, because you are showing me what it means to build community. We have an exceptional community at Island Space. We have a community of volunteers. We have a wonderful board of directors. But what we don't have is that community that says, let's break something and do something really different. Start again or rethink or rejigger or let me take this off your plate and I'm going to take it in a whole other direction.
So tell us, let's pause there, right? Like, so you're talking about Island Space Museum. You've been building this. You're now approaching a pivotal time in your life. You've lost a parent who was extremely dear and close to you. You were very close to your mom. She was almost your inspiration. You're dealing with, and Stacey, you and I talk about that, right? The sandwich generation of ailing parents and kids growing up. And you're questioning, you have a community, but now you need, or you feel the need to do something different. But tell us, what was the original vision for Island Space and what is now changing with all of the things that's happening, all of the things that's coming together in your life, good, bad, indifferent, and everything else?
If I may start a little before that.
Yes, of course.
I'm one of those mad creative people. And I am left and right brained, right? So I have a degree in architecture. Went and got my 4-year degree, started my interior design career, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, mommy, hey, daddy, I'm going to go run off and go sing with Beanie Man, right? And so I was on tour.
So let's pause there, right? Pause there. I want you to hear what she just said.
Architect
Yes.
jamming out with Beanie Man.
Then she leaves to go sing with Beanie Man.
One hook you can drop here that people would know from Beanie Man.
Come on,
Like one
drop
good
something
hook
for
everybody
us.
knows.
What, Sim Simma?
Everybody
There you go. Everybody knows that. So that was my early life. I've always been a creative person. I came to this country and had to start over because, you what I said, big fish in a little pond in Jamaica. You come here and, fortunately I wasn't scrubbing toilets or whatever, but I started at a hotel front desk.
Yeah.
Just to have a regular job because your degree doesn't mean anything in this country sometimes.
I feel like if we do a poll of how many of us are actually using the degree that we have.
Yeah. But anyway, I came to this country and my origin story as a Caribbean person started here because you come here and I share this all the time. I rice and peas. Jamaica, you eat rice and peas.
Yes.
And I went into the Cuban store. And I wanted rice and peas.
Yeah.
And this woman put the white rice over here and the black beans over there. And I'm like, what happened?
Right.
What is going on?
Yes.
And so culturally, I thought I was this Caribbean person in Jamaica because everybody eats ackee and sawfish. And everybody, eats oti apple. And everybody... And I come here and I learned that no, Haitian people do it completely different and the Bahamians have a different accent and the Cubans have a different music and way they dance. And so I became fascinated with just being Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years between me landing here and deciding I was going to figure out my life and museum time, there were so many Caribbean initiatives and endeavors that I found myself getting involved in. I did a little TV show thing where it was called Island Origins. Before there was an Island Origins magazine, and I am a 9-time Florida Magazine Association Award winner with Island Origins
Big
magazine.
up, Calibe.
Take notes, people.
So
9-time win. Not once, not two, not three, not five. 9-time win.
Yes. So Island Origins started out as a little television show. Somebody had been running around taking video of me and gave me a little program.
You were doing reels before reels was cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting them online, but we had actually on television. And so I had this Island Origins TV show where I'd go around and interview the Haitian people and the Bahamian people, and, whoever, Trini, Atobolda, whoever. And that became something else. Oh, that became Taste the Islands eventually, which was the first Jamaican-produced national Caribbean cooking series. It was on PBS and Create TV. That became an event, the Taste the Islands experience. That had a little pop-up in it, which was a Caribbean culinary museum inside of History Fort Lauderdale, where we were hosting the event. That became pop-ups that were these little mini Caribbean museum pop-ups around Broward County. And when COVID came along, we had a grant from the Community Foundation of Broward. Mind you, I'm doing all these Caribbean things and interacting with all these amazing Caribbean people in the diaspora throughout the whole time, learning about all the cultures, the things that We share that we have in common, as well as what makes us different and unique. And I'm fascinated with all this stuff as I'm going along. And here came the opportunity during COVID. We have this money from the grant. We can't do the event that we were going to do with it anymore. So Broward Mall, we heard from an affiliate, Andrew Martin, also Trinidadian, who shared with us that, Broward Mall, when they have empty stores, they will allow nonprofits to be in there for a month or two until the new owner, new lessors come in, lessees come in. And we went over to them. We were like, hey, we have this idea. We want to do this thing. Will you allow us to do it? I'm thinking we're going into one of them little inline stores, whatever you call them, for like 2-3 months. I'll put up some mannequins in the window and what have you. And I turn around and they're like, oh, here, have the Red Robin, the location that was the Red Robin, which was like one of the outside, a big outside space. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this space?
Yeah.
So I said to David, who is my co-founder, do we actually want this? Because this looks like a long-term investment. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Go big or go home.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And of course, here we are 5 years later. So, CG Mayor was there at the time when we were sweeping out the cockroaches. It had been locked up for like 2 years, and we had to reimagine this restaurant space as a museum. And we, reached out. The Bahamian tourism folks were very close to us at the time. They brought in Junkanoo things. When I went to the shipping place in Jamaica, I went to my mother's home and pilfered all of her antique things, right?
Wow.
All of the things she had gathered from her grandparents when they owned a plantation. And I put them into a barrel. And when we went out to the airport, the barrel people were like, what are you talking about? You're shipping a barrel out. That doesn't happen. They come in.
They need a new process.
So, I mean, very long-winded story, but I get excited when I talk about this because it really is, for me, the evolution of discovering what it meant to be Caribbean. And we grow up when you grow up in the region, you grow up in your one country, and your whole perspective of what it means to be Caribbean is that.
Yes.
I don't know what happens in Antigua. I don't know what happens in Aruba and in, Bonaire and in Trinidad and whatever. I saw those places when I was on tour.
Yeah.
Right.
But I never interacted with the people to understand their culture. That happened when I came to South Florida. And that's how the museum became a thing.
I want to share a perspective, right?
Yeah.
So as you're talking, I don't know, I made a joke about not using this architecture degree, this engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think as an architect,
she did.
I use it.
Pulled all of those pieces into this creative space, your brain. And I think the other thing I loved was, we can architect community.
Yes.
Like, I think a lot of times we look at a community very siloed in the sense of, okay, these are my chess people and my golf people and my work people. And I think when you start doing an ecosystem where you cross-pollinate some of those things, that's where magic happens, right? Yeah. And I also want to say, Denise and I appreciate you sharing that you're looking at what we're doing. But I always remember, I want to give kudos back to you because when the first time we met and you took time out of your busy day, you gave us a tour and then you sat down and I think I asked, like, what are some of the potholes that you've learned in your years of doing this that we can avoid, right? And listen, huge proponent of who's doing it best, good and bad, and then extrapolate from that what works for you. But what you shared specifically around getting the right network, watching a board, like have a board that actually doesn't only have good ideas, but works.
Mm-hmm.
Like it still plays in our head. We talked about it.
Yes.
And one of the things that I appreciate about you, one, you always answer our any voice notes or anything we have asking just advice, but you have this repository almost. You're like a chat GPT.
A chat GPT of the Caribbean. Really? Yes.
Like, and so all of that stuff, we and anybody coming behind us, like we're just on each other's shoulders trying to do this a little bit better every time. Yeah. So I want to just give you
kudos,
mad flowers for that.
Thank you.
But I do want to dig into what Stacey's saying, right? Like you really are. You came here with one perspective of Jamaican, and big up to my Jamaican people, what you guys are really believes when you're in Jamaica, that Jamaica is the world, right?
Yeah.
But you've come into this space and you're fascinated. So you don't close off from it. You actually open up and you embrace it. But I wanna dig in. Like, so you've been dealing with the Bahamians, the Haitians, and if you come into the museum, it's a true Caribbean approach to positioning and history. What do you think are, like, share with us what some of the key similarities that bring us together despite those differences that we call different fruits, different names, or we eat the rice and peas separately, or we
I will
or we
always
stew
stand
it
on curry chicken versus
as opposed
chicken
to
curry.
chicken
I don't
I
curry.
don't know who says chicken curry.
Yeah.
And then this thing about peas and rice.
Peas and rice.
Bahamians say peas and rice
Yeah.
instead of rice and
What's
peas.
the Haitians? I think call their rice and peas. It's a J word.
They have the John, which is the mushroom one, and then they have one called diri kole.
Not
Which
the mushroom
is-
one.
The diri kole is the one that looks like our rice and peas,
Whichever one, Kevin,
and it's delicious.
my husband has, they do a potluck because they have a bunch of different people working, and I am always the beneficiary.
of it, yeah. But Khalid,
But
tell
this-
us, what are
this-
the things that you've seen that sort of, despite all of these differences, pull us together?
The number, I mean, there's the surface level things, like we all have that, the African connection makes it so that we move the same. The music has that same undertone of rhythm, like Black people rhythm, if I may say,
Yes.
right?
You,
Yes.
For those of you who don't see us, everybody, as she's saying that,
It's
we're all
moving.
like,
We're moving.
Right? Everybody wants to say, so there's surface things like the music, and I'm saying surface, and it really is in our blood and in our
Yes.
bones and DNA.
Yes.
So let me not call it surface, but the standard things like the music, the food, where we all, even though the rice and peas and the peas and rice and the black beans and rice, it's not the same, but the elements are the same.
it's an emotional connection.
Understanding that turn cornmeal and polenta and fungi
Yes.
and cuckoo are all kind of related to each other. So there's food, there's music, there's a love of sport, there's a love of the carnivals and festivals and entertainment. There are those religious faiths that are rooted in Africa. So the Shango and the Obia and the Voodoo and the Santeria, or Orisha, whatever the proper terms for them are. But layered on top of all of that, I think, is number one, the resilient spirit that comes from having that, I'm not going to say just African, I'm going to say colonized background, because the Indian folks who came, the Middle Eastern folks who came, the Asian folks who came, the Africans, who everybody knows, right? All of them had to overcome something. Jamaican people, I don't know if you have the word bossy in Trinidad. Is that a word?
Bossy's like you show off. Plenty.
Yeah.
Like big show off.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? Confident. I'm going to use the term confident, right? Jamaican people are bossy innately.
Yes.
There are some who, even the ones who are like, have the chip on their shoulder and have the thing where the man is oppressing them or whatever. Even those people who are like that have an innate bossiness in them if they are
Confidence.
Jamaican. Yes, confidence. And I think that is coming from this spirit of resilience.
And overcoming.
I hate the word resilience because ChatGPT and the AI them use it so much. But anyway, I'm using it as a real person, right? There's a spirit of resilience that comes from being Caribbean that I don't think anybody can take away from us. And I think we overlay it on everything that we do when we come outside of the Caribbean and come into this country.
Isn't there also like a spirit about us? Like Stacey and I were talking about, sitting down, people watching, because we like to people watch.
In Trinidad,
But
we call it Macwin.
But you could look at somebody and go, look how that person is walking.
You know they're Caribbean.
And you know they're Caribbean, even though we've muted our accents, right? Because we've had to. We have to assimilate. We have to be understood.
Yeah.
And I did not understand the Jamaican patois for a year having moved there. But there's a spirit about us, right?
Yeah.
There's this thing about us.
So I'm using the term resilience, but I'm going to overlay the bossiness on that as well, right? There is confidence, a vibe. I'm gonna come here, and even if I do have to clean toilets or I have to go sit at a front desk when I have a degree in architecture, or whatever I have to do to survive and to support my family and to make life better for myself and my children, we come here. That's the mission. That's the mission, right? What American people call, or what we call the American dream, the house and the 2 kids, 2.5 kids and a dog, and whatever the situation is. We come here with that as the mission. That's the assignment. We're coming here to do better than everybody else, not because we think we're better than everybody else, but because in our innate bossiness, in our innate desire to overcome whatever the colonizer, I think it's in our DNA, as I said, overcome whatever it is the aspersion the colonizer has put upon us. We're going to do better. We're going to be better. Hence,
I think
fabulous people like you.
But I think too, right? Like there's an innate fight, right?
Yes.
There's a fighting spirit, and it's a sense of, I'm saying it, and I'm giving myself goosebumps because my husband laughs, my whole family, and I was like, I don't like nobody telling me what to do. Like, let me figure it out. Why are you telling me what to do, right? Like, I feel like that sense of braggadociousness or punching above our weight, like whatever words we want to use to describe it. I want to go back to the first thing you said. It's almost like us believing it before we can see it. So if you come here, in my case, I had half a suitcase. My sister had the other half. We shared a suitcase when we came up, right? One of 5 kids. And I didn't envision how I would go to college.
Right.
I didn't even know that. You're coming first flight, first everything. Somehow we figured it out with conversations, with asking questions, with honestly having a sense of humbleness around taking advice. And I think Caribbean folks rally around each other in ways that we don't spotlight because it's just natural to what we do. So whether it's helping you set up an email account or internet, we say puss-pussing, like you're really just quietly saying, hey, you do it. That's not how you do it. This is what you do.
Family is important to us, and that doesn't mean just the family by blood. It means like you when you create a family,
is community.
The village, exactly.
Yes.
When you create a village, the village becomes your family, and they show up, and you show up for them. Like I was saying to my friend this morning, there are people from other cultures. Let me not throw anybody under the bus, but there are people from other cultures who are very much about what it is that they need, and a friend calls and they need help with something, and their first thought is not, oh, how can I, even if I can't do it, how can I help them to fix the problem? How can I help them to find a solution? Their thing is, oh, no, I don't have any time for that. My life is this. And we tend to want to show up for others. So you ask me for something right now, most of the time I can't help you. But I'm immediately going to think, how can I try?
Go into your mental Rolodex.
Who can I connect you with? Who can I try and find? I called you guys the other day. I met somebody. I thought they might be a good connection. You didn't ask me to tell you anybody. But it felt like it would be a good match. And I think that's how we show up for it. That's my way. It might not be somebody else's way. But all of us have a way that we're going to try and help each other because we are family by nature of the little accent that we have, or, I might say a word and it's not a word that you understand, but you know that it's a Caribbean person saying that word, and it makes us family automatically.
Let's talk about family and community a little bit, right? Because your work really is extending the village mentality, right? That village of where we show up for each other. There's community. Stacey and I talk about it all the time. You talk about the community and pulling together, whether it's your susu or your trohan, whether it's the mothers coming together to midwife a baby being birthed, a birthing, or whether that community has played a really, really important part in your life personally and is now being expressed. Let's talk about your family and then your extended family, then your community a little bit.
Share with us that story about your mom. Like I was really moved, but I want you to share that story about like her last days and what that meant to you and how you're living your life differently because of what you saw manifest for her, right?
That kind of heritage, bringing it down from our DNA to what we've learned.
I will share with you that my mother was a giant of a person. Didn't speak loudly, wasn't flashy, but she would walk into the room with you. I remember there's a restaurant we go to called Milk Money. And she never had more than 3 words with a particular server. And I would be back and forth with him all the time, and he'd call me names, and we'd make fun of each other or whatever. And every time we would go back there, he remembered her and he didn't remember me. And she would just sit there quietly.
Yeah.
But she had that kind of personality. And she had a group of friends around her in Jamaica. All of my friends called her Auntie Clover. My sister's friends called her Auntie Clover. All of my friends, the other parents, you call Mr. this and Mr. that. Everybody called my mother Auntie Clover. And in her last days, as I reflected on her life, we wrote her eulogy, was a book. We had a book of Clover. The thing that impressed me most in her life is how many people just loved her authentically. She had a group of friends. She wasn't the talker among them, but she was the glue among them. This faction, I'm going to call them factions, right? They're all these factions.
Yeah.
And the person at the center of that wheel was my mother. She would plan the trips. She would coordinate with the people. If a party was happening, she wasn't necessarily planning the party, but who is there and getting the ticket. And so she had a village around her at all times. In her last days, she wanted myself and my sister with her, but she had those people who would come and see her and be with her and what have you. And at the time, of course, I'm building this museum and have all this stuff going on. So always writing grants and who you're asking for donations and events that you're planning and all the various things that have gone on in making Island Space what it is right now. And I think that was the first Mango Festival was coming up. It was around June 2024. And I'm in Jamaica with my mother and realizing that this might be the last moment that I have with her. And typically, you see Calibe, she coming with the computer and she's doing the work and you're not getting her away from the work. And it came to a point where I was like, I'm not going to let this come. If the museum is going to fall apart, I mean, knock on wood, it wasn't going to fall apart. But I was not going to allow museum, nor people, nor work, nor any other priority to take me away from this person who was so instrumental and important to my life. And God bless all of our friends. They came around. They made it so that we didn't feel like we were alone because they loved her so much. They made it so that me and my sister didn't feel like we were alone in those moments.
And you weren't, right?
Right? Because there was a village. Because of her village that she built. Every now and again, I just see some money come from. So how are we going to pay this person, this caregiver who is there, or this additional bill? And she was a responsible parent. She had her insurances in place, her health insurance, her life insurance. She showed us where all the bank accounts were. We didn't have all of that stress that other people have to go start GoFundMe to take care of family and things. But her friends, every now and again, here, go put some food in the house. I know it's you and your auntie and your sister and your cousin and everybody in the house. And her friends would show up however they could show up. And even now in my 2 years later stage, as I think about what is important, you asked some questions and I answered them very briefly, but as I'm thinking about what is important to me, my friend called me last night. I was sharing this with you before the show. And she goes, "Oh, can you take me to the hospital tomorrow morning? I have this major surgery." I'm like, "Is it something simple?" She's like, "No, but if you can't, don't worry. If you can't take me, I'll take an Uber." I said to her, "Are you crazy?"
God, yeah.
You'd have to wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, "I'm up already. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
Took her to the hospital, and on the way, she's there on her computer clicking away, sending emails because her place that she works is going to fall apart if she doesn't send all these emails. I'm like, "You're going into major surgery and this is what is on your mind right now. Can you think of something zen? Think of being at the beach, think of whatever." She's like, "No, I need to get these emails out."
Yeah.
And I dropped her at the door and she goes, "Okay." I'm like, "You're going in there by yourself? You're all right, whatever." Yeah, I'm good. And I sat there and I looked at her through the door on her phone and doing all this stuff. And I called her. I'm like, "Can I come inside with you?" She's like, no, you don't have to do that." And all I was thinking was the time when my mother was in the hospital. And she looked at me at one point in time and she said to me, "Don't ever leave me." My friends were like, oh, no, your mother don't mind if you go home and get rest. I was like, nah. She looked in my face and said to me, don't leave me, because she was in there and afraid and by herself.
Right.
And I looked at my friend going inside by herself to this major surgery that, hopefully it's routine and hopefully she comes out. I believe, have faith she'll come out. But I went and parked my car and I went back inside and I sat with her from 5:30 when we got there until almost 8 o'clock when they wheeled her into the room. Because if you don't have those people, if you don't have that village, if you don't have those friends who care about you, then what is life for?
Yeah. And I think that we overplay what success is, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We think success is all these things. Everybody that's going to come on here have 19 degrees, 44 titles, 5 businesses,
Whatever is in their
1 bag
bank
of sheep and
account.
cow, right?
Yeah.
And if you need to go to the hospital and then you cannot depend on somebody who is going to come there and sit with you and not be in their phone.
The litmus test is who picks you up at the airport.
Yeah. And funny enough, right? We've all traveled, right? So we've all gotten accustomed, independent, jumping into an Uber and whatever. But nothing feels special like when your friend said, "I'm coming to pick you up in the airport."
There's no trouble, man.
But Calibe, in this very emotional journey that you've taken us through, right? There is deep value in the culture of community. And Stacey's also speaking about how do we define and redefine success.
Yes.
And yes, obviously we all want to do well in life. We all want our children to be comfortable. We want to leave legacy, whether you have children, you and I don't, but we do want to leave a legacy.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, who's going to hold my hand in the hospital?
Yeah.
Oh, hit you a good buff, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Wow.
And then when you are deep diving into what makes us Caribbean and you're uncovering what I call our cultural assets, right? The community, which is bigger and deeper, which is inside of us. You talked about the drum, right? The drum is from Africa. There's also the tassa drumming from Trinidad. Where if you've sat through Chinese and Japanese drumming, it's the same core.
Yeah.
But there's something in our DNA that calls and is transferred to us. But I also think to you, looking at the value of what makes us cohesive.
Yes.
And you've just unearthed something for all of us in that our assets is our community. Our assets are the people around us, right? And the assets and those who want to lift us up.
Yeah.
Even when we're saying, no, I'll be fine. I'm just going to go into the hospital and type up my nose.
But I want to shake it up a little bit, right?
Yes.
All of us can sit here and accolade you about this museum. It's pretty. Oh my God, you're going to have all these events. You're going to do all that stuff. What is the unseen burden that you carry that none of us see because you, in your own way, having brain surgery and going in by yourself? And we drop in your by the door and we're like, yo,
buy
this museum real nice, girl. Have a good life.
Museum.
I want you, this is a Caribbean diaspora podcast.
Yes.
Like our goal is to not only talk about the good stuff, our goal is to get real with each other. And so what is the burden that your version of a tumor that you're carrying and that you wish we would all share that with you in a way that's sharper and more tangible than just
and see you as you're walking into the hospital, right?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being friends that help me at all. Let me first share with your listeners, because I think we've talked about the museum, but we haven't said what the museum is. So for those who have never been there, never heard of Island Space Caribbean Museum, we are the only Pan-Caribbean heritage museum in the world, right? We're the only one that shares the history of the entire Caribbean region together. You'll find a Jamaican one, a Cuban one, a Haitian one. This is the only one that tells everybody's history. You go in there, you will see our exhibits, our historical exhibits. You will see our art gallery. We host events there, chats and lectures, and the Jamaican CG does his lecture series there. We have kids there doing field trips and activities. You can come and do your activities there. And then we bring the culture out into the community as well with things like the Rum Cake Festival or the Mango Festival or a Nancy Children's Reading Festival or Reggae Genealogy Music Festival. Everything has to have a, yes, we love entertainment. We don't like boredom because we're Caribbean people, but it has to have an educational tilt to it as well. And that education is not anything boring. It is what do we need to celebrate in our Caribbeanness. I will say as well that I think a lot of time Caribbean people don't really like to hear about or learn about their history in a certain way because it is, when I learned about history, it was Columbus conquering the bush people and they were archaic and ignorant and third world and
That's
not
how
good
we
enough.
present it, right?
And yes, and we were enslaved people. No, we weren't enslaved people at the time. We were slaves.
Okay.
We were indigenous, not even indigenous, just backward and just all of the negatives. And the way that we paint the picture in the museum, the way that we want to paint the picture is that we had heroes. We had nannies and Toussaint Louvertures who made us the first free Black nation in the Western Hemisphere, the second free nation in the Western Hemisphere after the United States was in the Caribbean. We are the people who excel at sports and music, and we formed our own governments, and we figured out our money ourselves, and we figured out everything ourselves. And we are now the first Secretary of the Treasury in the United States, and we are the first woman Prime Minister, I almost said Prime Minister, the first female Vice President in the United States, and we are all of these things. And that is the story that we tell at Island Space, that when your children come in there, they're learning about their greatness. They're not learning about how they used to drag foot out a road. They're learning about their greatness as Caribbean people. So let's start there. The challenge that I am having right now that's making me feel like I almost want to start over is that we do have an amazing working board, but we don't have a board with people who go out and look for money. I'll be very plain and straight.
So a financial challenge.
It is a financial challenge more than anything else, but also structural.
Yeah.
As an architect, I think about, begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Right.
What does this need to look like at the end? So I envision the building, I envision the historical exhibit. Then think about the outside activities, the festivals that we would be planning and creating to drive numbers. When you're writing grants, you have to think about how many people do you affect in the community. And the best way to drive numbers is to bring people all into one space as opposed to expecting this person and that person to come one into the museum. And so we started doing these events as ways to bring the culture to the community rather than expecting people to come into us. And so the model changed altogether. We were trying to figure out how to do things inside of our space that would reflect the culture and have the community come in to participate in it. But again, when you're coming from a community that doesn't necessarily value museums, that becomes a challenge. So we've become a museum and center for the arts a little bit. And so when CG comes in and does his lecture, and everybody comes in and does stuff, but our community also believes, and I don't want to diminish this, I want to be careful about how I say this. Our community believes that showing up is their investment.
Right.
And it is. We love when you come, keep coming, bring more people. But in order to pay the light bill, in order to pay the staff who puts these events together, who makes sure that we're curating and that when you come in and you deposit your beautiful doll in the dress of Trinidad, or you deposit your tawa. I've been asking for a tawa for years now, and they keep buying me the new ones. I want to use.
Let's get a used tawa.
I have one in every. I use like
one
three.
with the curry stain in it. Right? But when you bring those things in, they are properly cataloged, and the team who is putting the events together and doing all of this stuff, guiding your children around and showing them this history and this culture that they need to learn. All of those things cost money.
Yes.
And so we do a thing where, I call it a cultural tithe. I think it is that important because when you go to church, you put in your little money, there's a reason that you do it. And we ask folks to give a cultural tithe, and they'll do their $5, their $20 and what have you. But our organization has been sustained by people who don't share our skin color.
Right.
It has been sustained by Community Foundation of Broward, God bless them, by Broward County Cultural Division, God bless them, by federal grants and state grants, which now that governments have changed, those have all dried up and disappeared, unfortunately. And so we're in a moment now where, as before this, I was happily writing my grants and grant heavy and what have you. Last year, when they all dried up, right? I mean, we'd be in moments sometimes where, okay, we don't know where the next money is coming from. And I'd be like, oh, I wrote that grant last year. They approved it. It should hit in the next few weeks. So it's typically been, how do we get through the next few weeks, not how do we get through the next year? And I don't want to focus on the challenges and the misery and whatever. What I want to focus on is solutions. So my surgeon, my panacea for whatever is happening is going to be, who can we pull into our board or our committees or our volunteer contingent who will help us with fundraise, with philanthropic or institutional partnership kind of fundraising? Who is going to help us with these programs that we care about and that we know the community cares about and appreciates? Who is going to help us be that evangelist, be those ambassadors to the community? And I want this to be a Caribbean community. If you are Jewish or if you are Caucasian, please make your donations. We love your donations.
And our community are all of those things, right?
Yes. I'm talking about non-Caribbean.
Yes.
Who has been our, I find that
partners.
because core Caribbean people like the party, and that's how we bring them inside. We bring them inside with our party and then we hit them with the education.
Right.
So we have to wink and do what we're doing. Our community values the work. They're not necessarily the ones who donate to it.
Yeah.
And so others who value that, value the understanding of that paradigm, that ecosystem, they will invest into us. We are asking as well, and it means something different, not more or less important, but it means something different when it is your people who see the work that you are doing and make a cultural investment. I don't like when people say, oh, you're begging me money. I'm not begging you anything. I'm doing serious work. It is a lot of work. It is stressful work, but it is work that
that has to be done.
It's so important.
Yeah.
And it is not just important to me. It is important to the children that come in there and say, I've heard children look at the wall and go, oh my God, I've never seen somebody from my country presented in that kind of way, that they look important, right? That is, of all of the fancy events and everything that goes on, those are the things that resonate with me the most. I love when the premier of the British Virgin Island comes and does his things there. I love when the Bahamas choose us to be the location for their 50th anniversary celebration. We just had a conversation with the CG from Barbados, and hopefully we will be the site of Barbados' 60th anniversary celebration. I love when all of those things happen. But when those Haitian children come in there and they paint in a little mask with the Haitian flag and they feel good, because to Sandra, we're trying to correcting me. No, it was Henri Christophe.
Yes.
I love that, right?
Yes.
That is what makes everything worth it. And when you invest in island space, those are the things that you're investing in. And us being able to tell and capture and celebrate more of those stories.
And Calibe, because we're going to wrap up, so before I hand over to Stacey to wrap up, how can people find you? How can people find you? And it's important, right? We at Whistle, we see ourselves as Caribbean leadership, and we've heard this heartfelt plea that this is a legacy building moment. This is a moment where we step in as leaders, and we step in to create something beyond ourselves. We tell our stories differently. All of the things that we're doing in Whistle. But how can they find you? Where can they find you? And how can they get in touch with you? Because you're not looking just for funding. You're looking for institutional strengthening. You're looking for influence. You're looking for people who've done this before. Any sort of collaboration. It is a business we're building. We're building the cultural assets. So how can they find you?
Physically, they can find us at the Broward Mall. It's 8000 West Broward Boulevard. We are inside of the mall in the northeast corner. And we're open Thursday through Saturday, 11 to 7, and then Sunday, 11 to 6. Online, you can find us at islandspacefl.org. On social media, it's either Island Space or Island Space Caribbean. Island Space or Island Space Museum. I think there's an Island Space FL somewhere as well, right? But if you Google Caribbean Museum, we're the only one who's going to come up. Yeah, Island Space. Come up. And then if you want to reach me, it's Calibe, Calibe, at islandspacefl.org.
And you can see her on social media as well. She's there signaling and sending the call that we all have a collective responsibility, Stacey.
Thank you, Calibe.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I wanna close this the way Denise opened, right? So we are, as a Caribbean diaspora, having this moment, and we've always had moments. We talk about moments now for decades, centuries, sometimes, right? But in this era, our influence, our culture, our swag, our humility, our intelligence, it's being activated in a way that we have to make and take the opportunity that's being given to us. And I think what Calibe just described is, our culture cannot only be something that we consume, whether it's music or food or clothes or whatever, right? Art, books. It has to be cherishing, honoring, building, sometimes brick by brick, but also check by check.
Yes.
The spaces that hold this. We spend all this money to go to the Smithsonian. Heck, we live in Florida. We spend all this money to go to Disney World. Universal is, I think, now about $300 a ticket. Plus, you're a family of 4, you're probably going to spend about $5,000. Like, no kidding, right? For a solid 3 days. Without this influence and this infrastructure to support the legacy of what we're trying to do and leave behind, then all of this is just noise. And we all just having a good time. And when the party done, right? So I want to say that the way that we started this conversation was that the Caribbean is having a moment. And while that's true, I also think that this moment demands something different from all of us.
Absolutely.
And you've really given, even me personally, a lot to think about, right? So how will we build the things that are existing? How do we build it out further and stronger? How do we not just celebrate it, but how do we participate in it that's impactful, that accelerates wealth, community, and legacy? And I want to challenge all of us with kids. I mean, I have 2 teenagers where my daughter has volunteered at the Boca Museum.
Mm-hmm.
She did art there. And my son has volunteered at the YMCA. And while those are amazing organizations, I'm going to wear my mom hat and my leadership hats and my Caribbean hats in a different way. And I want to challenge the hundreds of people that are going to listen to this podcast to do the same and figure out a way how even mobilizing the next generation around a heritage and a culture that we are proud of because we are immigrants, most of us, but they are still othered. And when the other thing I say, Calibe, is if I can't be it, if I can't see it. And I always use Kamala Harris as the example of I have never in my life envisioned, even as a child, being the president of
the United States.
Correct. And it was only when I saw her and somebody took the beautiful photo of her speaking and her niece's ponytails, her pigtails was in the picture, watching her aunt give this speech. And I looked at my daughter and I said, I've never dreamt that with her.
Yeah.
So I feel like what you are doing in a way is what Denise and I are activating via the microphone and your physical presence is we have to own the narrative of our story. And Denise and I always talk about it. It cannot only be party, culture, and food. Man, we love those things.
Yeah.
It has to be institutions. It has to be education. It has to be scholarships. It has to be you doing pop-ups in universities where there's a program for Caribbean Heritage Month. Right. How do we do those things?
And I think it's important for those of us who are listening that you listen now with the ear to build, with the ear to contribute, with the ear of responsibility. So if you don't have kids, you certainly know kids or adults really who can
Listen,
benefit.
a lot of them retired and they are born with all of this knowledge.
You are a retiree, you are a leader. It is time for us to step up into this culture. So
may I invite everyone listening in this moment, whether you are an organization, whether you are interested in board membership or volunteering or giving just ideas and advice, or you are from a Caribbean community that may need a bit more representation in the museum, or you have some kids you want to volunteer to, voluntold, to come and please let Island Space be that resource. We want to be partners with everyone. People tend to want to go off and do their own thing and everybody's independent. But if we can be an umbrella area where everyone comes together to do the projects, we want to be the home for that.
Yeah.
So, if you're watching this podcast, make sure you share it with people that you know this will resonate with. And even those who will not resonate, please share it. You can find us on We Whistle, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.
So it's not just great to be leaders for our careers and our professions and sort of consumers of things that people are building so passionately. You may listen, but we were here sitting with Calibe and watching her passion and her emotion and the soul work that she's putting into this. And I know there's a variation of this for all of us, right? Some people care about kids, some people care about dogs, some people care about, whatever your passion is, pursue that. But I also think there's room for all of us to become curious and do more. And that's why we created Whistle, right? To create rooms where conversation turns into action, where action mobilizes Caribbean power, and where we have global impact. And so the question now for all of you is, we have built something. How do we hold on to it? And how do we make it stronger and more capable for the next generation? So thank you for listening.
Thank you. See you next time.